The elevator climbed silently toward the 42nd floor, carrying Elena Rosewood toward another day of walking on eggshells. She smoothed her pencil skirt with trembling hands, checking her reflection in the polished steel doors. Every detail had to be perfect. Hair pulled back in a flawless chignon, makeup subtle but polished, not a single wrinkle in her crisp white blouse. Damian Sterling demanded perfection, and Elena had learned that even the smallest imperfection could trigger his legendary wrath. The elevator chimed, and Elena stepped into the marble-floored reception area of Sterling Industries. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the pristine workspace. Other employees hurried past, with downcast eyes, everyone knowing that the 34th floor was CEO territory, a place where careers were made or destroyed with a single word from the man who ruled this corporate kingdom. Elena's heels clicked against the marble as she approached her desk, positioned strategically outside Damian's corner office like a guardian at the gates. She could see him through the glass walls, already at his desk despite the early hour. His dark hair perfectly styled, his broad shoulders filling out his tailored charcoal suit. Even from a distance, his presence was commanding, intimidating. "Ms. Rosewood." His voice cut through the morning quiet like a blade. "My office. Now." Elena grabbed her tablet and notepad, her heart already racing. 3 months as his personal secretary, and she still felt like prey entering a predator's den every time she walked through those imposing glass doors. Damian Sterling stood with his back to her, staring out at the city skyline. At 35, he was the youngest CEO in the company's history, having built his empire through ruthless intelligence and an absolute refusal to accept anything less than perfection. His tall, lean frame radiated power even in stillness, and when he turned to face her, his steel-gray eyes held the kind of cold calculation that had made grown men weep. "The Morrison contract," he said without preamble, his voice devoid of warmth. "You've made 3 errors in the preliminary notes." Elena's heart sank. She'd spent hours on those notes, checking and rechecking every detail. "Sir, I reviewed them multiple times. Are you contradicting me?" His eyebrow arched dangerously, and Elena felt the familiar chill that accompanied his displeasure. Page 7, paragraph 3. "You've confused the quarterly projections with the annual figures." Page 12. "You've misspelled the subsidiary's name." Page 18. "The formatting is inconsistent with company standards." Heat flooded Elena's cheeks. She wanted to defend herself, to explain that she'd been working 16-hour days to keep up with his impossible demands, that she'd barely slept trying to anticipate his needs. But she'd learned that explanations only made things worse. "I apologize, Mr. Sterling. I'll correct them immediately." "You'll do more than correct them. You'll redo the entire document. I want it on my desk by noon, flawless this time. And, Ms. Rosewood?" He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne, see the way his jaw tightened with controlled anger. "This is the kind of carelessness I expect from a temp, not someone drawing a salary from my company. Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, sir." The words came out barely above a whisper. "Good. And cancel my lunch with the board. If I can't trust my secretary to handle basic documentation, I certainly can't waste time on social niceties." Elena nodded, clutching her notepad so tightly her knuckles went white. As she turned to leave, she caught something in his expression. Flicker of something that might have been regret or perhaps exhaustion, but it vanished so quickly she wondered if she'd imagined it. Back at her desk, Elena stared at the Morrison contract through blurred vision. Around her, the office hummed with quiet productivity, but she felt utterly alone. Other secretaries had lasted mere weeks under Damian Sterling's harsh regime. She was determined to be different, to prove that she could weather his storms. She just wished she understood why he seemed so intent on breaking her spirit, when all she'd ever wanted was to do her job well. The clock on Elena's computer screen glowed 9:47 p.m. as she finally finished the Morrison contract revisions. The office floor had emptied hours ago, leaving only the soft hum of air conditioning and the distant rumble of traffic far below. She rubbed her tired eyes, knowing she should go home but reluctant to leave until every detail was perfect. A soft light still emanated from Damien's office, and Elena found herself studying his silhouette through the glass walls. He sat hunched over his desk, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. For the first time since she'd started working for him, he looked human, vulnerable even. Thunder rumbled outside, and Elena glanced at the darkening sky. The weather reports had warned of severe storms, but she'd been too focused on work to pay attention. Lightning flickered across the horizon, illuminating the storm clouds gathering over the city. "You're still here?" Damien's voice startled her. He stood in his doorway, jacket discarded, his usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. His steel-gray eyes held a different quality. Not the usual cold calculation, but something closer to concern. "I wanted to finish the contract corrections," Elena said, standing quickly. "They're ready for your review." Instead of his usual sharp critique, Damien frowned. "It's nearly 10 o'clock. You should have left hours ago." "I don't mind staying late, sir. The work is important." Something flickered across his features. Surprise, perhaps, or admiration. "When did you last eat?" The question caught Elena off guard. In 3 months, he'd never asked about her well-being. I had lunch. That was 9 hours ago." He moved closer, and Elena noticed the faint lines of exhaustion around his eyes. "There's a deli that delivers. I'll order something." "That's not necessary, Mr. Sterling." "Damien." The word came out rough, almost reluctant. "When it's just us, you can call me Damien." Elena's heart skipped. This was the first crack she'd seen in his professional armor, the first glimpse of the man beneath the CEO mask. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." He pulled out his phone, his movements efficient but somehow gentler than usual. "Turkey or roast beef?" "Turkey is fine." Elena watched in amazement as Damien Sterling, the man who'd reduced grown executives to tears, ordered sandwiches with the patience of someone calling a friend. While they waited for the food, a crisis erupted. The Singapore deal that Damien had been negotiating for months suddenly hit a snag, with the overseas partners threatening to pull out over contract disputes. Elena found herself pulled into the emergency, taking notes as Damien made rapid-fire phone calls, juggled time zones, and worked his particular brand of corporate magic. "Get me the Chen Industries file," he commanded, then paused. "Please." The addition of that single word felt monumental. Elena retrieved the file, their hands brushing as she passed it to him. The contact was brief but electric, sending warmth shooting up her arm. Damien's eyes met hers for a moment, and she saw something raw and unguarded there before he looked away. For the next 2 hours, they worked in unprecedented harmony. Elena anticipated his needs, pulling files and making calls with an efficiency that clearly impressed him. When she suggested a different approach to the contract language, he didn't dismiss her. Instead, he listened, considered, and ultimately incorporated her ideas. "That's brilliant," he said, after she proposed a solution to the payment schedule dispute. "How did you—" He stopped himself, but not before Elena caught the admiration in his voice. "I studied international business before taking this position," she admitted. "I've always been interested in corporate strategy." Damien stared at her as if seeing her clearly for the first time. "Why are you working as a secretary?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications. Elena chose her words carefully. "Sometimes we have to start somewhere to get where we want to go." Before Damien could respond, the lights flickered. Thunder crashed overhead, much closer now, and rain began pelting the windows. They both looked up as the storm intensified, neither aware that their careful professional boundaries were about to be shattered by forces beyond their control. "The weather's getting worse," Elena observed, watching lightning illuminate the sky. Damien nodded, but his attention seemed focused on her rather than the storm. "Elena," he said, her name sounding different on his lips, softer, more personal. "I want you to know that your work tonight, it was exceptional." Heat flooded Elena's cheeks. It was the first genuine compliment he'd ever given her, and it meant more than any praise she'd ever received. The lights flickered again, more violently, this time, and both of them looked up with growing unease. The building plunged into absolute darkness. Elena gasped as the power died completely, cutting off the hum of air conditioning, the glow of computers, even the emergency lighting that should have kicked in. Thunder crashed overhead, and through the windows she could see that the entire city block had gone dark. "Elena?" Damien's voice came from somewhere in the darkness, calm but concerned. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she managed, though her heart was racing. She could hear him moving, the soft sound of his footsteps on carpet, the rustle of fabric. "The emergency generator should have started," he said, frustration clear in his voice. "The building management company is going to hear about this." A soft glow appeared as Damien activated his phone's flashlight. In the pale light, his face looked different. The harsh lines softened, making him appear younger, more approachable. He moved toward her desk, careful not to startle her. "The elevators. We'll be down," he said. "We're stuck here until power's restored or emergency services can get us out." Elena nodded, trying to process the situation. Alone with Damien Sterling, trapped in darkness, with no work to hide behind and no professional barriers to maintain their careful distance. "There's a break room down the hall," Damien said. "It has a couch and some supplies. We'll be more comfortable there." He led the way, his phone's light casting dancing shadows on the walls. The break room was small but cozy, with a leather couch, coffee table, and a few chairs arranged around a small refrigerator. Damien found some battery-powered emergency lanterns in a supply closet, and soon the room was bathed in soft, warm light. Elena sat on one end of the couch, hyper-aware of how intimate the setting felt. Damien took the other end, but even with the distance between them, she could feel his presence like a magnetic field. "I'm sorry about this," he said quietly. "Not exactly how you planned to spend your evening." "It's not your fault." Elena studied his profile in the lantern light. Without the harsh fluorescent office lighting, he looked less intimidating, more human. "These storms can be unpredictable." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the rain against the windows. Elena found herself stealing glances at Damien, noticing things she'd never had the chance to observe before. The way his dark hair had a slight wave to it when it wasn't perfectly styled, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his hands moved expressively when he wasn't consciously controlling them. "Can I ask you something?" Damien's voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "Of course." "Why do you stay? Working for me, I mean." He turned to face her fully, his gray eyes reflecting the lantern light. "I know I'm difficult. Most people don't last a month." Elena considered her answer carefully. In the intimate darkness, honesty felt safer somehow. "Because I see something in you that I don't think you see in yourself." Damien's expression grew guarded. "And what's that?" "Passion. Intelligence. A man who cares deeply about everything he touches, even if he won't admit it." Elena's voice grew stronger as she continued. "You're hard on people because you expect excellence, not because you want to hurt them. At least that's what I tell myself." For a long moment, Damien said nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "You're wrong about one thing. I do want to hurt people. I want to push them away before they can—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "Before they can what?" "Before they can leave." The words came out barely above a whisper. "Everyone leaves, Elena. Everyone." In that moment, Elena saw past all his walls to the wounded man beneath. "Tell me," she said gently. Damien was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then slowly the story came out, about Victoria, the woman he'd loved with everything he had, about the car accident that took her away just weeks before their wedding, about how he'd built walls so high and thick that no one could ever hurt him that way again. "I convinced myself it was better," he said, staring at his hands, "safer to be alone than to risk that kind of pain again. But somewhere along the way I forgot how to be anything else. I forgot how to be human." Elena's heart broke for him. Without thinking, she moved closer, covering his hand with hers. "You're not alone now." Damien looked up at her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Elena, you don't have to be afraid with me," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." For the first time since she'd known him, Damien Sterling let his guard down completely. And in that moment of perfect vulnerability, Elena saw the man he truly was. Not the cold CEO, but someone worthy of love, someone who desperately needed it, even if he was afraid to accept it. The power returned with the dawn, jolting them both awake from where they'd fallen asleep on opposite ends of the couch. Elena blinked in the harsh fluorescent light, momentarily disoriented. Across from her, Damien sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. The intimate atmosphere of the night before seemed to evaporate in the bright office lighting, but the connection between them remained, crackling in the air like electricity. "We should," Damien started, then stopped, seeming unsure of how to navigate this new territory between them. "Get back to work," Elena finished softly, understanding his dilemma. In the light of day, with the corporate world reasserting itself around them, last night felt like a dream, but everything had changed. Over the following days, Elena noticed the subtle shifts in Damien's behavior. His criticism, while still exacting, lost its cruel edge. When he corrected her work, he explained rather than simply condemned. He began asking her opinion on projects, listening to her suggestions with genuine interest. The looks between them grew longer, more meaningful. When he handed her files, his fingers would linger against hers. When she leaned over his desk to point out something on his computer screen, she could feel the tension radiating from his body, see the way his jaw tightened with restraint. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon. Elena was in the file room, reaching for a high shelf, when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to find Damien standing in the doorway, his eyes dark with something that had nothing to do with business. "Let me help," he said, moving behind her. His body pressed against her back as he reached over her head for the file, his chest solid and warm against her shoulders. Elena's breath caught as his scent surrounded her, expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. "Damien," she whispered, his name escaping her lips without permission. He froze, his arm still extended above her head. She could feel his breath against her neck, could hear the slight rasp in his breathing. Slowly, he lowered his arm, but he didn't step away. Instead, his hands came to rest on her waist, gentle but possessive. "This is dangerous," he murmured against her ear, his voice rough with barely contained desire. "We work together. There are rules." Elena turned in his arms, her hands coming up to rest against his chest. She could feel his heart racing beneath her palms. Some rules are meant to be broken. His control snapped. One moment they were standing apart, the next his mouth was on hers, fierce and demanding. Elena melted against him, her lips parting, under his assault. The kiss was everything she'd imagined and more. Desperate, passionate, full of months of suppressed longing. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Damien rested his forehead against hers, his hand still holding her close. "Elena," he breathed, her name a prayer on his lips. I can't lose you." "You won't," she promised, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw. "I told you I'm not going anywhere." The dam broke completely then. Damien lifted her onto the filing cabinet, his mouth finding hers again as her legs wrapped around his waist. His hands tangled in her hair, loosening her careful chignon until her dark waves fell around her shoulders. "So beautiful," he murmured, against her throat, pressing hot kisses along her neck. "I've wanted this for so long." Elena gasped as he found that sensitive spot just below her ear, her fingers clutching at his shirt. "Damien, please!" The sound of approaching footsteps in the hallway broke them apart. They sprang away from each other, both flushed and breathing hard. Elena quickly smoothed her hair while Damien straightened his tie, both of them trying to regain their professional composure. But something fundamental had shifted. The careful boundaries they'd maintained were gone. replaced by a desire too strong to ignore. That evening, Damien appeared at Elena's desk as the office emptied. "Have dinner with me," he said, his voice low and intimate. "Not as your boss. As a man who's falling for his secretary and doesn't care who knows it." Elena's heart soared. "Yes," she whispered. Dinner led to Elena's apartment, where months of tension finally found release. Damien's hands were reverent as they explored her body, his touch both gentle and demanding. When he carried her to the bedroom, Elena saw a side of him she'd only glimpsed, passionate, tender, completely devoted to her pleasure. They made love, with desperate intensity, as if trying to make up for all the time they'd wasted dancing around their feelings. Afterward, as Elena lay in Damien's arms, she traced lazy patterns on his chest. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Damien tightened, his hold on her. "Now we figure out how to make this work, because losing you is not an option." 3 months into their secret relationship, Elena had never been happier. At work, they maintained professional facades, but stolen moments in empty conference rooms and quiet corners kept the fire burning between them. Damien had transformed, not just as a lover, but as a leader, his harsh edge softened by Elena's influence, making him more effective and far more liked by his employees. But secrets had a way of surfacing, especially in the corporate world. "There are rumors," Damien said one evening as they lay tangled in Elena's sheets, moonlight streaming through her bedroom window. His fingers traced idle patterns on her bare shoulder, but Elena could feel the tension in his body. "What kind of rumors?" she asked, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew. "About us. The board is starting to ask questions." Damien's voice was carefully controlled, but Elena heard the worry beneath. "Corporate relationships are complicated, especially between executives and their assistants." Elena sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. "Are you having second thoughts?" "Never." His response was immediate and fierce. He pulled her back down beside him, his gray eyes intense in the dim light. "But we need to be smart about this. There are protocols, policies." "Politics," Elena finished bitterly. She'd known this moment would come, when the outside world intruded on their perfect bubble. The crisis came sooner than expected. Regina Blackwood, the company's head of human resources, and a woman who'd had her sights set on Damien for years, requested a private meeting with Elena the following Monday. "Ms. Rosewood," Regina said, her smile sharp as a blade, "I think we need to discuss your relationship with Mr. Sterling." Elena kept her expression neutral despite her racing heart. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Please, credit me with some intelligence." Regina leaned back in her chair, clearly enjoying Elena's discomfort. "The question is, what are you hoping to gain from seducing your boss? A promotion? A raise? Or are you planning something more permanent?" Heat flooded Elena's cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. "My relationship with Mr. Sterling is professional." "Is it?" "Because I have security footage that suggests otherwise." Regina slid a tablet across the desk and Elena's heart sank. There, in grainy black and white, was footage of her and Damien in a passionate embrace in his office. "What do you want?" Elena asked quietly. "Your resignation. Effective immediately. I'm prepared to offer you a generous severance package in exchange for your discretion." Elena stared at the footage, her mind racing. She could take the money and disappear, save Damien from the scandal. Or she could fight. But fighting meant exposing them both to corporate politics that could destroy his career. "I need time to think," she said finally. "You have until end of business today." Elena left the meeting feeling numb. She made it through the day on autopilot, keeping her turmoil hidden behind her professional mask. That evening she found herself in Damien's office after hours, staring out at the city lights. "Elena?" Damien's voice was concerned as he approached her. "What's wrong?" She turned to face him, memorizing every detail of his face, the strong jaw, the gray eyes that had learned to look at her with such love, the mouth that had whispered her name in passion just hours before. "Regina knows about us," she said simply. Damien went very still. "What does she want?" "My resignation." Elena's voice was steady, though her heart was breaking. It's the only way to protect you. Like hell. The fury in Damien's voice surprised her. I won't let her blackmail you. Damien, be practical. A scandal like this could destroy everything you've built. And what about what we've built? He crossed to her in 2 strides, gripping her shoulders. Do you think I care more about this company than I do about you? You should. It's your life's work. You're my life. The words came out raw, desperate. Elena, I love you. Do you understand what that means? After Victoria, I thought I'd never. But you changed everything. You made me remember what it feels like to be alive. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks. I love you too, that's why I have to do this. No. Damien's grip tightened. We face this together. I don't care what Regina thinks she can do to us. The next morning, Damien called an emergency board meeting. Elena watched from his office as he strode into the conference room, his jaw set with determination. Through the glass walls, she could see him addressing the board, could see Regina's shock as he took control of the narrative. When he returned, his expression was triumphant. What did you tell them? Elena asked. The truth. That I'm in love with my secretary and I plan to marry her. Damien's smile was fierce with satisfaction. I also informed them that Regina's attempt to blackmail you constitutes harassment, and that her employment with this company is terminated effective immediately. Elena's legs gave out and she sank into a chair. You told them you want to marry me? Damien knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. I know it's not the most romantic proposal, but he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Elena Rosewood, will you marry me? Will you be my partner in all things? Business and personal? The ring was perfect. A classic solitaire that caught the light like captured starfire. Elena looked from the ring to Damien's face, seeing nothing but love and certainty in his eyes. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Elena realized that sometimes the best love stories began in the most unexpected places. Sometimes you had to weather the storm to appreciate the sunshine. And sometimes, just sometimes, love really could conquer all. Their wedding 6 months later was the social event of the season. As Elena walked down the aisle toward Damien, she saw not the cold CEO who had once terrified her, but the man who had learned to love again because of her. In his eyes, she saw her future, not as his secretary, but as his equal, his partner, his heart. And when he kissed her at the altar, sealing their union before God and everyone they knew, Elena knew that some fairy tales were worth fighting for. The end.